I was lying on the roof of our small weathered house, my journal balanced on my knees. Meadowbrook was so quiet you could hear the wind brushing through the trees and the faint hum of crickets in the distance. The sky was clear that night, a sprawling canvas of stars I had been sketching for years. I'd always felt like the stars were more than just points of light. They were watching, waiting, but for what, I didn't know. "Dinner's ready?" Dad's voice echoed faintly from the kitchen window below. I climbed down, careful not to slip on the loose shingles. Dad was at the table, poring over a mess of papers and electronic components. He'd been like this for months, detached, buried in work. "You okay, Dad?" I asked, sitting across from him. He looked up, startled, as if seeing me for the first time that day. "Alice, I think I've found something," he said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "What is it?" Instead of answering, he led me to his study, a cramped room filled with shelves of books and humming equipment. He handed me a pair of headphones. "Listen to this." The sound was faint, like a whisper carried on the wind, but it wasn't natural. It pulsed rhythmically, a sequence too deliberate to be random. "What is it?" I asked again, my voice shaking. "I think it's a signal," he said, his voice trembling, "and it's not from Earth." The days after we heard the signal were surreal. Dad grew more restless, spending every waking moment in his study. I tried to ignore the gnawing sense of unease, but it was hard when the news was full of reports of strange phenomena, unexplained power outages, sudden atmospheric shifts, and sightings of massive, triangular shadows in the sky. One night, I was on the roof again, sketching. The stars seemed dimmer, their light muted. That's when I saw it, a dark shape moving across the sky, blotting out the constellations. I froze, my pencil slipping from my hand. The object was enormous, its edges glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. It hovered silently above Meadowbrook, casting an unnatural shadow over the town. People began pouring into the streets, their faces lit by the eerie glow. A low hum vibrated through the air, growing louder until it was almost deafening. And then a voice, cold, mechanical, and inescapable. "Prepare for assimilation." Panic erupted. People screamed, running in all directions. I bolted inside, slamming the door behind me. "Dad!" I shouted, racing to his study. He was already packing a bag, his face pale but determined. "Alice, we need to leave now." "What's happening?" I demanded, but he didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a small device, its surface pulsing with a faint blue light. "Keep this safe," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Whatever happens, don't let them take it." And we didn't make it far. As we drove through the winding back roads of Meadowbrook, a bright beam of light swept over us, and the car's engine sputtered and died. "Out!" Dad shouted, grabbing the device and pulling me from the car. The source of the light became clear as a drone descended from the sky. It was spider-like, with sharp metallic legs and a single glowing eye that scanned the area. "Run!" Dad yelled, shoving me toward the woods. I hesitated, watching as he picked up a crowbar from the trunk and stood his ground. "Go, Alice!" he roared, his voice breaking. I turned and ran, my heart pounding in my ears. Behind me, I heard the sound of metal clashing against metal, followed by a scream that made me stumble. "Dad!" I cried, but there was no response. The drone was on me in seconds, its light cutting through the trees. I tripped over a root and fell, clutching the device to my chest. Just as the drone closed in, a gunshot rang out, and it collapsed in a shower of sparks. "Get up," a gruff voice said. I looked up to see a man with a rifle slung over his shoulder. He offered me a hand. "Who are you?" I asked, still shaking. "Marcus," he said, "and if you want to survive, you'd better come with me." Marcus led me to a hidden camp deep in the woods where a group of survivors had gathered. They were an eclectic mix, farmers, mechanics, even a retired schoolteacher, but they all had the same haunted look in their eyes. "This is Lily," Marcus said, introducing me to a young woman tinkering with a makeshift computer. She had bright, curious eyes and an easy smile that belied the tension in her shoulders. "What's the device?" she asked, pointing to the object I clutched tightly. "I don't know," I admitted. "My dad said it's important." Lily studied it for a moment before nodding. "If it's alien tech, I might be able to figure it out." That night, the camp was attacked. Drones descended from the sky, their beams slicing through tents and trees. Marcus barked orders, and the survivors fought back with whatever they could find: axes, rifles, even kitchen knives. I found myself cornered by a drone, its glowing eye locking onto me. It lunged and I ducked, grabbing a nearby branch and swinging it with all my strength. The impact barely fazed it, but it gave me enough time to scramble away. Lily appeared, wielding a taser rigged to overload the drone's circuits. She jabbed it into the machine, and it convulsed before collapsing. "Stick with me," she said, pulling me to my feet. We fought side by side, using every ounce of courage and ingenuity we had. By the time the drones retreated, the camp was in ruins. But we were alive. We spent the next few days moving through the forest, always on edge. Every rustle of leaves or distant hum made us jump. Marcus led the way, his rifle always ready, while Lily kept tinkering with the device. I stayed close, my eyes darting between the shadows, wondering if we'd ever feel safe again. "Where are we even going?" I asked one night as we huddled around a small fire. Marcus pointed to the distant mountains, their peaks shrouded in mist. "There's an Arkhan base there. If we can get inside, we might be able to use that thing to disrupt their network." Lily glanced up from the device, her face lit by its faint blue glow. "It's risky," she said, "but it's our best shot. If this thing does what I think it does, it could send out a pulse strong enough to fry their systems." "And if it doesn't?" I asked. "Then we're screwed," she replied with a shrug. The trek to the base was grueling. We avoided roads, sticking to the forest, but the terrain was rough, and the weather didn't help. Rain soaked us to the bone, and the cold bit at our skin. By the time we reached the base, we were exhausted, but the sight of it jolted us awake. The structure was massive, a shimmering monolith that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Drones patrolled the perimeter, their beams cutting through the mist like searchlights. "We'll never get in there," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Sure we will," Lily said, pulling a small tablet from her bag. "I just need to hack into their security system. Piece of cake." It wasn't a piece of cake. The drones were relentless, and the base's defenses were far more advanced than we'd anticipated. As we crept closer, Marcus took out a patrol drone with a well-placed shot, but the sound alerted the others. "Move!" Marcus shouted as beams of light swept toward us. We sprinted for the base, weaving between the trees as drones descended from above. I felt the heat of a beam sear past my shoulder, and I stumbled, falling into a patch of mud. "Get up!" Marcus yelled, pulling me to my feet. We reached the base's outer wall, and Lily frantically worked on the control panel. "Just a few more seconds!" she shouted as Marcus fired at the approaching drones. "Lily, we don't have a few seconds!" I screamed. The door finally slid open, and we dove inside just as a drone's beam scorched the ground behind us. The interior of the base was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The walls seemed alive, their surfaces shifting and glowing faintly. Strange symbols floated in the air, forming patterns that disappeared as quickly as they appeared. "Stay close," Marcus said, his voice low. We moved cautiously, our footsteps echoing in the vast, empty corridors. The hum that had haunted us for weeks was louder here, vibrating through the floor and into our bones. As we ventured deeper, we stumbled upon a massive chamber filled with rows of glowing tanks. Inside each tank was a person, suspended in a strange liquid. Their eyes glowed faintly, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. "Oh my God," Lily whispered, her hand covering her mouth. "What are they doing to them?" I asked, my voice shaking. Marcus examined one of the tanks, his jaw clenched. "They're converting them," he said grimly, "turning them into whatever they are." The sight ignited a fire in me. "We have to stop this," I said, gripping the device tightly. As we continued, the base's layout grew more confusing, the corridors twisting and looping back on themselves. It felt like the walls were shifting, trying to trap us. Lily stopped suddenly, her eyes wide. "They know we're here," she said. Before we could react, the Arkhans appeared. They emerged from the walls, their liquid metal forms rippling as they moved. Their glowing eyes locked onto us, and they attacked with inhuman speed. Marcus fired his rifle, but the bullets barely slowed them down. One of the Arkhans lunged at me, its metallic claws slicing through the air. I ducked and swung the device, striking it in the head. The impact sent a jolt through my arm, but the Arkhan barely flinched. "Lily, get the device ready!" Marcus shouted as he fought off another Arkhan. "I'm working on it!" she yelled, her fingers flying over the controls. I grabbed a discarded drone's arm and used it as a makeshift weapon, swinging it wildly at the advancing Arkhans. Marcus took down one with a point-blank shot to its head, but more kept coming. "We're outnumbered!" I screamed, panic rising in my chest. "We just need to hold them off!" Marcus barked. Lily finally activated the device, and a pulse of energy rippled through the chamber. The Arkhans froze, their forms flickering like static before collapsing. But the victory was short-lived. The Arkhan leader appeared, its towering form shimmering as it stepped into the chamber. "You cannot win," it said, its voice echoing in my mind. The leader moved with terrifying grace, its liquid metal body shifting with each step. It didn't attack immediately. Instead, it showed me visions, flashes of a dying world consumed by fire, its people fleeing into the void. "You understand now, Siren Mai?" "It's ner dirbit nai," Sao said. "We do this to survive." For a moment I hesitated. The images were so vivid, so raw, that I almost believed it. But then I thought of my dad, of the people in the tanks, of everything we'd lost. "No," I said, gripping the device. "You don't get to decide who survives." The leader lunged at me, its claws aiming for the device. I dodged, rolling across the floor and activating the pulse again. The energy wave hit the leader, but it didn't collapse like the others. "Lily!" I shouted. "We need more power!" "I'm on it!" she yelled, rerouting the device's energy. Marcus threw himself at the leader, using his rifle as a club. The leader swatted him aside like he was nothing, sending him crashing into the wall. "Marcus!" I screamed, but he was already struggling to his feet. "Finish it!" he yelled. I activated the device one last time, and the energy surge was so intense, it knocked me off my feet. The leader let out a piercing screech before disintegrating into a shower of light. The base began to collapse around us, and we barely made it out alive.